Roger Nichols.
Okay, and then Roger, to my left, Roger Nichols, who, we have something here on Roger. Here we go. Roger is entering his fourth decade as he says so himself, the unimpeachable expert in the field of digital audio.
But you're 29.
Yes, but to tell you the truth, he's got a lot to back it up. For starters, he was a nuclear engineer. And he, in addition to 7 Grammy wins out of 11 nominations, Roger has, and the amazing discography that the man has, including 32 years worth of work with Steely Dan, Frank Sinatra, Motorhead, Roseanne Cash, Bela Fleck, the Beach Boys. He's also been possibly the biggest exponent of digital recording throughout the world in terms of doing panels, in terms of doing lectures, seminars, and also helping facilities set themselves up, basically helping the industry set itself up for the digital age. And last but certainly not least, Roger, you didn't blow up the world with nuclear engineering. You instead went into digital audio. You tried, right? Is that possibly the only thing that you tried and failed at? How did you get into it? I mean, you were literally a physicist.
Well, but before I went to college to do the nuclear physics stuff, I was loved music and loved the technical end of it, like these guys, and built tape recorders and messed around with them. Built them out of pieces from other ones because I didn't have a working one to start with, and so I learned by that. And in high school, I was lucky enough that Frank Zappa was my neighbor. And so Frank Zappa used to come over to my house, and we would have 2 Magnacord tape recorders, and we'd layer guitars and bounce them back and forth, 2-track to 2-track, and build up all these amazing things to mess around with. And I went, this is going to be fun. This is easy, but this is where it starts. And the second thing is I hated clicks and pops on vinyl records, because I would wait till my folks went to bed and I'd put on records on a stereo that I built, and I'd lay on the living room floor and just listen intently to every record that I could get my hands on. And but the clicks and the pops, the noise stuff always got in the way. Then I got to a point, I saved up a bunch of money, and I bought this 2-track Magnacord 1028 reel-to-reel tube portable machine. And I talked friends of mine into letting me come down and record their bands at the bowling alleys and things, and just started doing it like that. Recorded everything that went by, and learned every step of the way about, like they were talking about setting up the microphones, and it really makes a difference what source is going into the microphone more than what specific microphone you're using for some technique. I mean, I had microphones that I got out of the garbage from the high school and things like that I started with.
Well, unlike Eric or Alan, there's not a particular studio that I associate with you in your early days. Was there a particular studio that you worked at, or
there was a little studio in Torrance that a couple other guys and myself started called Quantum, and we started basically. Took a 4-car garage, cut it in half, made a little studio, and we would do commercials for Angel Stadium and things like that in L.A. And the Carpenters before the Carpenters. So Richard Carpenter played keyboards. Cubby O'Brien from the Mouseketeers would play drums, and Karen would sing, and Larry Carlton, who at the time was playing guitar out of Disneyland, we saw him and went, this guy's good. We had him come over to the studio and work on commercials and things. And we did some stuff for Kenny Rogers in the first edition. And we did language lab tapes. That's where I learned how to edit. They'd come in and, do all these language tapes, and then we'd have to cut out all the lip smacks with a razor blade. Right? And this was a low-end studio. We were at the point, people would ask us, well, what kind of equipment do you have? Because they wanted Ampex, right? So we went down to Ampex and bought some little Ampex labels and put them on our TX.
And jacked up the hourly rate a little bit.
Right.
Okay, this is good.
And then from then, so I would do this on weekends. after I started working at the nuclear plant, because we had 5-day weekends kind of thing because of the shift work. And then
this explains the glow about you, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
And then ABC Dunhill, we supplied all the equipment for their first studios. And then they asked me if I wanted to go to work for them, and I said sure, because it was a bigger, they had a bunch of artists, the Mamas and Papas and Four Tops and Dusty Springfield and things like that. So I said sure, I'll go to work for them. And I remember sitting in the office with Phil Kay, who ran the studio, and he's sitting there and he says, we'd really like you to come to work for us. We can give you $250 or $350 a week to start. And I said, I'll take $250. So,
what was your epiphany moment, though, for digital audio? Because that is the domain that you've come to be associated with.
Well, I started messing with digital audio in 1976, and using converters, military converters from TRW that they used for microwave and things like that, and put those together to try to do audio things with them. And Roger Lynn, who made the first commercial drum machine, and I went to the same assembly language classes at this little company, one of the first computer companies in Southern California called Compal. They made these little computers, and we went to the assembly language classes and we're learning how to do this. And he was doing some things for Toto, working on some digital audio stuff, and I was doing this thing that we used on Gaucho. And
Steely Dan's Gaucho.
Steely Dan's Gaucho record. And the first sample system that I built was, I couldn't design filters very well, so it was 125 kilohertz 8-bit. Because there weren't anything better than 8-bit converters back then. And that's what we used for the drums on the Steely Dan Gaucho record. Hey 19, My Rival, Glamour Profession, IGY was on Nightfly. And then when better converters came out, I started over again for Nightfly and had a 16-bit system and built a card that would plug into the 3M machine so we could transfer stuff digitally.
So what's interesting, actually, is you were just like a lot of you gentlemen here started out building your own equipment or working with a little consumer off-the-shelf tape recorder kind of thing. Even in the beginnings of digital audio, this stuff did not come out fully formed. You were basically taking little bits and pieces of technology and chips that you find here and there.
Just in the production process, it's problem solving. There's something, I wish we could do this, or I can't really play this guitar lick, and if I change the tuning on this string, I can get to it, things like that. And in the technical end of it, it's the same kind of thing. I want something that's perfectly steady, make a 24-track tape loop to make it perfectly steady, because there weren't drum machines yet, or whatever the problem was, some idea that the artist had couldn't get on tape for some reason. And so one of the things I like to do is the problem solving and go, how could we figure out how to do this? So it was either, sampling or recording to hard disk or things like that worked out, for us.
Yeah, but it's just it's scientific solutions, but you came at it from a very musical point of view. You thought like a musician before a scientist, perhaps. Yes?
Well, my trombone was taken away from me in junior high school music class. The guy, I remember it to this day, he came up to me and he said, "Roger, give me that!" He took it away from me and gave it to the guy next to me.
So that was your career change?
That was my career change.
Some of the most musical people aren't necessarily musicians, though. But what do you think about how not having that kind of history, so to speak, that coming up through tape duplication or as a musician or nuclear physics, or just whatever you've done in the background before you. In other words, it seems to me that producer might be something that you achieve as opposed to something that you start out at. I mean, does it have an effect on music, do you think? Does it affect on the way records sound?
Well, I think you end up with two different kinds of product. You end up with one product that we do and people that have been around a long time. The outcome is based on your experience and the things that you learn and the things that you like after trying 400 different ways to do each thing. You come up with your favorite thing, and that's what makes Alan's records sound like Alan's records. And me for one, I like that, and I like the way Desmond writes songs, and when the Rouge album came out, I was in New York working on a Steely Dan thing, and I heard something on the radio, and I went, what? That's really cool. Went right down to the store and bought the thing, and I listened to it every single day. I went, I wish my records would be like this. I'm serious. And it's like, learning things from that, and so this experience leans toward how my records are made. Somebody that's new to it and doesn't have that experience, they go into the school and they learn all the mechanical part of producing the record. They're going to make different sounding things, and some of them are going to be great, and some of them aren't. It's just they're going to be starting from a space where they might not know that you can't do that, and they'll go out and do it. It's like inventing a time machine or something. So, and then it happens all the time with the stuff that you've done that is this whole different thing than the stuff that I've done. But I like it. I wouldn't necessarily start out making a record like you do, but I like your records, and there's part of that. There's all different kinds of genres and things, and there's new things coming out all the time. There used to be just one Billboard chart. Here it is, the chart. Now there's 72 pages of different genres of music, and they all have their charts because it's starting to spread out, and it can because people can produce records that are different than the way that we've done it because of their difference in experience.
Our campus in Frankfurt has a question pretty much for the panel along these same lines. How important do you think it is in the different stages of being an engineer or a producer to actually have a good basis of music theory, and do you have to have a good basis of music theory to take it to that next level, or is it just everybody has their own way of doing things and that's the end of the day?
Well, there's I'll start by saying that I consider myself a keyboard owner, not a keyboard player. And I can go through, and thanks to MIDI, I can figure some things out and do some things, but I can't do it. So I'm not a musician. I'm from the technical end of it, and records that I've produced and engineered, I think, came out very well, and they may be different than if Alan produced the same artist or whatever, because he's got a different way of looking at it. He's an excellent musician, and if somebody else can't play the part that he has in mind, he can go out and do it. Things like that, right?
You obviously haven't spent very much time in a room with me playing it.
But and then other input, So
I think musical.
Two things. From the physics standpoint, not thinking about the sound of originally recording on analog. There's some